Coming up next here on the Metal Command podcast, Helloween announces their brand new track listing for their new album that comes out in August of 2025. There is a brand new band composed of a lot of veteran Bay Area thrash musicians called Nefarious, and they release their debut single. Primal Fear has a brand new song out, and so does the band Dark Angel. All of that coming up next here on the Metal Command podcast.
You are listening to the Metal Command podcast.
Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Metal Command podcast. Tony here with you. Really excited to be here for this episode because there's a lot of great things going on. And of course, if you do like this show and want to support it, by all means, hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell to be notified anytime I do post any kind of content. And if you follow this show on any other form of social media, by all means, give the show a like and a follow over there. Have a lot to talk about as usual. Dark Angel has put out their first single in over 30 years. A lot of people are really not happy with that. And I am going to be talking quite a bit about that song and give you my thoughts on it. But the reception to the song has been very negative. So I will be talking about that. There's a brand new Bay Area thrash band called Nefarious. A lot of great people in there. Former Exodus guitar player Rick Hunold's in it. Kat DePena from Hyrax is in it. Doug Piercy, formerly of Blind Illusion and Heathen, is in it. And you just have a lot of great people involved with that new band. I will be talking about that. Primal Fear has a brand new single called Far Away. That is off of their upcoming album called Domination, which also they've revealed that artwork as well. I want to start the episode off, though, by talking about my favorite band of all time, Helloween. So Helloween has announced the new album title and track listing. The name of the album is called Giants and Monsters, and it comes out August 29th, 2025. And they have released that track listing. I'm putting it up right here. And I have a lot to say about this album. First of all, before I get into what I'm about to talk about, let me talk about how intriguing and how amazing the story of this band actually is. You know, Helloween has one of the most interesting stories of any band that has ever existed, ever, especially in the heavy metal scene. And I think before I get into the reason why I think this next album will be better than the last one, I want to talk a little bit about how amazing the story of this band actually is. So Helloween, of course, made their big impact with Walls of Jericho, first couple Keeper albums, and they really had an impact on the heavy metal scene, especially in Europe. I mean, a lot of people here in the States obviously have been inspired by them, but they really had a huge influence on the European power metal scene and just European metal in general. You can't deny it. A lot of people will cite them as an influence. Just everything about this band on those first 3 full-length albums really has just become a huge influence over the scene in general, and they are considered a very legendary heavy metal band by so many people out there. And it's interesting to see what they have done with this Pumpkins United thing since it happened. You know, they're like probably the only heavy metal band to bring back their former lead singer. And technically, Kai, you can count him as a former lead singer because he sang in the first album and the first EP. You bring your 2 former singers back, one of whom is also a former guitar player in the band. You don't fire anybody. You bring them back in the band, and Helloween basically created one of the greatest live shows I have ever seen. I've been to a lot of concerts in my lifetime, but to watch Michael Kiske and Andy Darris go up on stage and do what they do live, watching Kai Hansen and Michael Wyketh and Sasha Gerstner playing guitar together, watching Kai go on stage and sing, along with Marcus Grauskopf, who's probably one of the greatest bass players I've ever heard, and Danny Loblo, who's one of the most phenomenal drummers I've ever heard. This is probably, in my opinion, the most positive thing that has happened in the heavy metal scene within the last 10 years, and probably one of, if not the most unique live show I have ever seen. And the fact that that has gone over very, very well with everybody, the fact that it's still going on, and for me personally, I can essentially say that most likely this is how the band will finish their career. It is an incredible story. However, I want to point out another amazing part of this story that sort of gets overlooked. And that's the story of what led to this band's success. What led to the consistency that this band has had over the last 30 years. Folks, it starts in 1994 with Master of the Rings. So let me give you a little bit of context. Obviously, we know that the 1990s, it was a very, very bad time for heavy metal. You had a lot of replacement singers. A lot of those replacement singers in many of these bands did not last that long. However, Andy Darris joining the band in 1994 and the success they were able to achieve as a band is truly one of the most remarkable parts of this story that people seem to forget about. So obviously, Helloween was at their lowest point after the Chameleon album as far as popularity was concerned. They had the lawsuit back then. They were just literally coming off some very, very bad times in the history of this band. And Andy Darris joins the band, and they rebuilt the audience this band used to have. Throughout the 1990s, throughout the worst time period in existence for hard rock and heavy metal. And that consistency since 1994 has carried on through all the way till now. Not only that, but what makes the story even more amazing is the fact that Andy Darris replaced a very beloved singer in Kai Hansen. And what's even crazier about that is the fact that he sounds completely different from Michael Kiske, and they found that success. Now, obviously, management does play a role in that. Other guys in a band play a role in that. But most bands, folks, and you know how this goes, when a new singer joins, there's always a huge backlash against that new singer, or people just aren't interested in the band anymore. And to me, it felt like the opposite happened. When Andy joined and Master of the Rings came out, and Time of the Oath came out, and Better Than Raw came out, these albums come out, and the interest in the band grows quite a bit. And that man has now been in that band for 30 years. And truthfully, when you look back at their discography, there aren't really many bands out there that are as consistent over a 30-year stretch as Helloween has been. They've grown their audience. They have found success again. And then, probably the best ending of any story you can think of, you bring back you basically bring back one of the singers the one singer he replaced, and another founding member / guitar player. And you basically have one of the most incredible live shows that has ever existed in the heavy metal scene. And they grew that audience in the very beginning during the worst decade for heavy metal music. You know, I've been privileged over the last 27 years to be able to watch this unfold. From the standpoint that I've always been in with these guys, it's truly a remarkable story. it seriously is one of the most remarkable stories in the history of the heavy metal scene because it's so atypical with the way everything has happened. And if you think about it, aside from adding two people, two former members of the band back into the band with Michael Kiske and Kai Hansen, they haven't had any real turnover in over 20 years. I think that's absolutely phenomenally amazing because that is not common either. But this is a band that, when they say that you never get to meet, there's the old saying, if you meet your heroes, you might be disappointed. Folks, I can tell you that I've met my heroes with these guys, and I was not disappointed and never have been disappointed. Now, moving on to the rest of this segment, let me tell all of you why I believe this next Helloween album, Giants and Monsters, is going to be better than the self-titled album that came out in 2021. First of all, let's talk about the amount of time between when these albums were recorded and released. So keep in mind that the self-titled Helloween album, it came out in 2021. It was actually, I believe, slated to come out in 2020, which means that most of that material was probably written in 2019 and 2020. So they have had a lot of time to write songs, and the guys who are the main songwriters in the band had plenty of time to write that material, reevaluate that material, and refine it. I think that's number one. The other reason I think that this next album is going to be better than its predecessor is because they've already made one album together as a 7-piece, meaning that you have all of those experiences together from the previous record. You get to know people's nuances. What does Michael Kiske like to sing? What does Kai like to sing? What kind of music do these guys sound? What kind of songs do these guys sound the best? As far as like what kind of music might fit their voice the best? The whole experience of making that self-titled album, they can now go into the studio more confident than they were on this previous record. In fact, Andy Darris said the exact same thing in an interview that we did December of 2024. Check out this interview clip when I asked him, what was it that you learned from the previous record that you basically took into this upcoming album, Giants and Monsters? Check out this clip. Obviously, it's always a learning curve to go into making one of these albums, especially with two new people. Were there a lot of things you learned from the last album and recording it that you said, hey, we're going to do this better the next time? Did you bring a lot of that into this next record?
Yeah, I think the main keyword would be confidence.
Okay.
So last album, we had to get to know each other in that new setup lineup, how to work with him, how to work here, and blah blah blah. And this time we just realized, okay, actually everybody has such great ideas. Just don't control each other's. We don't need to actually stick in a studio for pre-production for 2 months because everybody did it for himself.
Yeah,
let's just listen to it and said, wow, cool. So this time we've been some lazy bags actually and just said, pre-production, we just do ourselves back at home, everybody in his own studio, and we just take the technique we are given. So internet is great and you can have live sessions online, and that made life so much easier because everybody is just relieved that you may stay at home. You still work hard, but you're at home. And as we all know, when you're at home, work doesn't hurt that much so, as being back in the studio again somewhere in the world, but not with your family. Mm-hmm. And nowadays you can actually have your family life. You have your 8-9 hours per day in the studio. You yourself decide when you make a break or when you go and have a meal with your lady or go down to the beach in my case. that makes life so much easier and much more enjoyable than sitting in a freaking studio again and again and again, each and every day for 2 months just for a pre-production, which you could easily do at home together.
Yeah.
So this time, I have to say, this confidence that we earned for each other, that helped a lot to make things even more easygoing. And I think that's exactly what you listen when you go through the songs and you listen to them. You feel that easiness. This wow, okay, cool. I love it. So that's the way to go. I don't want to say that I want to be back at home when I'm on tour. So I hate the idea of laser shows or something like that.
No, yeah.
So as long as I can walk, I want to be on stage. But production-wise, I have to say, I love the technique we have nowadays.
And that's Andy Darris talking about what the mentality was that the band had going in and recording this next Helloween album. And that's exactly that. You have more confidence. And obviously, one of the things that I pointed out is that they had a lot more time to write music. Just because of the delays. You had the delay in touring because of COVID. The album came out later than it probably would have been because of COVID. So all the delays caused that, and you just have more time to write that music. So I think this next record is going to be phenomenal. Now, a lot of people know that there was a listening session in Amsterdam. I know one person who was there who says he thinks the album is absolutely incredible and that it will definitely not disappoint. However, most of us, myself included at the time of this recording, have not heard the album. So if you want a glimpse of what the album might sound like from Andy Darris' perspective, here's another interview clip from the interview Andy and I did back in December 2024, where he talks about what the album sounds like from his perspective. Check out this clip. How would you say this album, the upcoming album, is different? What are the differences between this one and the self-titled album? Which, the self-titled album came out probably a year later than it should have because of the whole pandemic thing. And how would you compare this upcoming album to the self-titled record?
I'd say it's much more easy listening because there's less constructed stuff on it. It's more flowing with the wind, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very positive. So I would rather say it's more Happy Helloween.
Okay.
Than the other album. I think it's a bit more. Yeah, the flow is for my taste not as edgy as the last album, which was cool. Have like edgy stuff.
Yeah,
but I think we should have more or less some counterpart to edgy, more exhausting things. Like the last album for me was great to listen through. It was edgy, it was heavy, it was complicated here and there. But after listening to it, then I needed a pause. It was very extensive. What's the right word? I'm only a German here. It was exhausting.
Yeah, I gotcha.
After this album, I needed some break. Put it that way. I loved it. I still love it, but it's demanding.
Yeah,
I think the next album would be much more easy listening. I think much more enjoyable to sing along. There are lots of parts in there, so I would rather describe it as a more happy Helloween album.
Yeah,
that would be the best description.
Yeah, I would say there was some darker stuff on the self-titled album. It's almost kind of like, when, the Dark Ride had a lot of darker elements on it, and then you went to Rabbit Don't Come Easy, which had more, I guess, happier elements. It's probably the best way. You still had a little bit of that dark edge on Rabbit, but you kind of went a little more traditional, I guess. Like when you hear Just a Little Sign, and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to describe because there are lots of speedy and heavy things on it, but when I listen through it, I feel good. I mean, that's a good sign. Not that I felt bad when I listened to the last album. That's not what I mean.
Oh, I gotcha.
Don't twist my words.
I will not do that.
It's fun. I listen to it and it's fun, definitely.
And that is Andy Darris describing this next upcoming Helloween album. Now, a few of us saw Kai Hansen going on Facebook, posting a video, basically playing like 1 or 2 second clips from this album. But folks, I have all the confidence in the world it's going to be better than the self-titled one. The self-titled one had some great stuff on it. Songs like Fear of the Fallen, songs like Robot King, Skyfall, Best Time, Indestructible, Mass Pollution, just great songs. I think this next one, I can't wait to hear it, because I really think it's going to be that good. So with that said, hopefully a single comes out soon, which I probably, if I'm going to theorize here, probably it's going to come out soon. And when it comes out, I will be talking about it, of course, obviously. So this is such an amazing story. This band has such an interesting history, and it's going to be interesting to see how the next chapter of Pumpkins United, as we call it, plays out. Now let's go into another fun, positive thing here. That is a band. It's a band called Nefarious. New thrash band composed of a lot of great Bay Area thrash musicians. You have members, former members of Exodus and Heathen, Blind Illusion. You got members of Hyrax, Death Angel. I mean, a lot of great musicians involved with this band. They have a new single out called "One Nation Enslaved." So you got Rick Hunolt from Exodus, former Exodus guitar player, obviously. You have Doug Piercy, who played in Heathen and Blind Illusion. Kat de Pena from Hyrax, which, by the way, as a side note, I haven't really listened to that band in a long time, but now that I know that Kat's in this band, I've actually been revisiting the back catalog of Hyrax. So I forgot how much I loved that band, actually. But you have some great musicians involved with this. So this new single comes out, One Nation Enslaved, and it's being kind of hyped up as this like super group of musicians, veteran musicians from the Bay Area thrash scene. Folks, you know what usually happens when you hear of a super group? It usually, in most cases, means that the song and the album are probably going to get overhyped and it's going to be a disappointment. So upon listening to the song, my conclusion was basically this. This band is an exception to that rule, meaning that the song that they put out, One Nation Enslaved, I think is absolutely phenomenal. And anytime I have these projects, I go in with, I really don't have a lot of expectations. I don't think it's going to be great. But man, I got to be honest with you folks. This band's debut single is absolutely fantastic. And you know what the best part about this song was? And when a band puts out a single, one of the ways that it resonates with you is if the melodies from the song stick in your head. So when I was listening to this, towards the middle of the song, there are some really kick-ass guitar harmonies that Rick Hunolt and Doug Piercy play in this song. And the melodies from those guitar harmonies stuck in my head. Before you go into the chorus, there's like a bridge section that Catton sings that stuck in the melodies that he sang there stuck in my head. And then I proceeded, since this single came out, to probably listen to it another 50 times. I could be honest with you. If I had to give you a list of bands that have kind of like an all-star lineup of veteran Bay Area thrash musicians, or veteran musicians from any band for that matter, if I give you a list of bands that I absolutely loved that have come out with the, quote, all-star lineups, unquote, that list would be very short. And upon listening to this song, I'm pretty sure this band is going to be on that list. Now, they have an album that's going to come out, but when I hear this single and I listen to it 50 times, it just leaves me wanting more. It leaves me wanting to listen to this album. Like, I'm like extremely hyped up right about now over this. Like, I'm not even, when I heard this, I was like, man, this is great. Now, one of the comments, one of the negative comments about it, of course, is that it sounds like it's been done before, and it's nothing new. I've seen that comment floating around out there. I think any negative comments about it, that's what's being said, essentially. But folks, nobody's, these guys aren't reinventing the wheel here. They aren't doing anything that hasn't been done before. But that does not mean that the song is not good thrash metal. Classic Bay Area thrash/speed metal. They don't have to reinvent the wheel. These guys were actually part of the scene when it was up and coming. The guys in this band helped shape that scene. They really helped shape that scene in many ways. They were part of it. They were part of the many bands that came up in it. I mean, how Exodus is considered one of the very earliest thrash metal bands. I mean, I think Bonded by Blood was actually supposed to come out before it actually did. Heathen was kind of a latecomer. Death Angel was a latecomer. Phenomenal band, by the way. Blind Illusion was a big part of that scene in the Bay Area for quite a while, actually, in the 80s. So what I'm getting at is that just because it doesn't bring anything different that hasn't been done before as far as, the style of music, doesn't mean the song isn't good. Because I think the song is absolutely incredible. And I was, like I said, I was completely surprised and shocked about how amazing this track actually was. Because again, the expectations aren't very high. Most of these projects, they get overhyped. But this band, folks, it's a completely different ball game. So Nefarious is a band to check out. The name of the song is One Nation Enslaved. I'm going to put it in the show notes, a link to it, because I think it's absolutely incredible. So with that said, going into the break, I'm going to, after the break, talk about the new Dark Angel song. I'm going to talk about the new Primal Fear song that has just come out. All of that coming up right after this. Hey everybody, it's Tony here from the Metal Command Podcast. I appreciate you watching this program, and if you want to see more of what I offer on this show, please by all means hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video, follow me on any other social media outlet that you see this program, and again, I appreciate all of your support. Welcome back to the Metal Command Podcast. Tony back here with you on this episode. Now let's get into the new Dark Angel single, Extinction Level Event. Dark Angel, of course, one of the one of the thrash bands that was lesser known back in the day, coming back after many years putting out a single. That single, of course, has garnered a lot of negative reaction. A lot of people do not like it. I mean, you do have some of the diehard fans that love it. I'm not particularly a fan of it, and most of the people that reacted on my page when I talked about it are in agreement with me. And when I'm talking about the Facebook page. So let's get into this, because not only did this song receive a lot of very negative feedback, I am not particularly a fan of it. And this song is a perfect example of everything that I think is wrong when it comes to the future or potential future of the heavy metal scene. So let's talk about the feedback and what people are saying about the song. I mean, most people are saying the song is absolutely terrible. They think the production sucks. They think that after all of these years, the band could do better. And about 90% of the people that dislike the song are bashing the vocals, and they think the vocals sound like one person said in a comment that I read. I don't think it was on my page. Somebody said that the vocals are the extinction level event for the band. So I have some thoughts on this. I don't agree with everything that has been said about the song, and I agree with a lot that has been said. So first of all, I have the 3 previous Dark Angel albums. Darkness Descends, Leaves Scars, Time Does Not Heal. I don't have the debut. I think I might have listened to the debut, but if I own it, it's lost somewhere. But essentially, from my perspective, I never thought Dark Angel was really a great band to begin with. They weren't like absolutely horrendously terrible, but I never really thought they were that great. I think part of the reason people love them is that Gene Hoglan has done so many amazing projects, and that's the band he came from. So I think they get a little bit overhyped because of that. But I'm not really a hater of their music, but I'm not particularly a huge fan. And I think it's fair to say that before I comment on the single. So a lot of people hate the production. They hate the song. They think that the vocals sound awful and that it's a disappointment and that the band can do better. So let me tell you with what I agree and disagree with and why I dislike this song. So when people talk about the production, the drums, the guitars, just the sound of the song in general, I don't think that the production really sounds all that bad. A lot of people think it's terrible. I would probably disagree with that, at least for my preferences. I don't think the song sounds bad at all. Do I think the band can absolutely do better? Absolutely. And let me be very fair and say this. Folks, it's one song. The album, quite possibly, might be very, very good. I say that because we all know, I've ranted about this before, record labels and even some bands many times have very poor judgment when they pick singles for albums. And I have albums that I absolutely love where like the first or second single or all 3 singles are like the worst songs on the album. So the album could possibly be good. But as of the recording of this, they've only released 1 song off of it, which I don't think is very good. Now, the next aspect of this are people complaining about how terrible the vocals sound. So here's my take on that. And this goes into what I dislike about the song and why I do not like it. Do the vocals sound bad? Well, it depends on how you look at it. The singing itself, like Ron Reinhardt's voice, does it sound bad? No. Like I said, I don't think the production of this song is bad. And I think he actually sounds good. But my problem with the vocals is that when you listen to the song, the vocals don't fit the song. Like the way the song is put together and the way that it's written is what I do not like about it. I do not like the way the vocals were done for this song. I don't like the vocal approach to the song. When people say the band could do better, absolutely they can do better. And that is my main problem with it. Like when I listen to this, I'm like, these vocals the vocal lines themselves just feel like they don't fit this song. And that might be a big reason why people say, oh, the vocals sound bad. Now, there's a lot of people making some very stupid comments and some very absurd comments about the band. And I get that the guy that wrote the song is a former member of the band that's no longer with us anymore. But it is what it is. Like I said, I'm not a big fan. And I think the song is actually pretty bad. And I am in agreement 110% that this band is totally capable of doing better than this. So, why do I think this song symbolizes something that is, how shall I say it, a big problem for the future of the metal scene? Why did I say that in the beginning? And I'm going to explain that here in a little bit. I said that because this band, like many others, bands that, come out of nowhere, that have been gone 30 years, 25 years, 40 years, a lot of these bands will come out of nowhere and get what we call legacy band privilege or legacy band immunity, meaning that just because this legacy band comes back, some people will automatically say that they are great. But more importantly, when you have so many younger or newer metal bands that have come onto the scene that are extremely talented, especially writing songs a lot better than what Dark Angel is doing, people will roll the red carpet out because Gene Hoglan, obviously being the phenomenal musician and drummer that he is and has accomplished as he is, people will roll that red carpet right out for this band and ignore most of the younger talent or the newer talent that is out there. And it's not just Dark Angel. It's a lot of other like legacy bands that might have been around for a few years and they had a little short stint. They weren't that popular, at least not compared to their contemporaries. And they just come out of nowhere and suddenly everybody's rolling out the red carpet. Because what's going to happen, and I've seen this happen numerous times, is that this band is going to be handed a lot of opportunities that a lot of other great bands will never get. They will get festival slots. They will get opening slots, and they won't have to pay 20, 30, 40 grand in those opening slots just for the privilege of touring with a legacy act. Like a band like Dark Angel would be considered kind of a legacy act, more of like an underground one, but that is what they are considered. And they're going to be getting handed opportunities because they are back, regardless of how good or bad the new album is actually going to be. Like, for example, no one's going to tell Dark Angel, hey, you got to pay 30 grand to us just for the privilege of touring with us. Oh, and by the way, you get to play right when the doors open when nobody is in the building. Like, nobody's going to do that to them. But most of your newer bands, that will happen. And a lot of those bands will be suckers and actually pay the money to play to nobody. Or practically nobody. That is something that happens, but it won't happen to these guys. Not only that, but somebody termed legacy band immunity. No matter how good or bad the album is, you're going to have a huge group of people that are going to say, hey, I think it's cool. I'm going to like this band because it's a legacy band. No matter how good or bad the album is. Because there are people that, and I'm sure there are people that legitimately like the song. And I'm sure with many other more obscure bands that come out of nowhere to make a comeback, I'm sure there are people that legitimately like the music. But folks, this happens a lot. And it goes into why I've always said, no matter how good your music is, it doesn't matter. What matters is if people think they can make money off of you. That's another episode that I'm going to be recording. But nevertheless, this is sort of a byproduct of bands like Dark Angel and many others who have come back who really weren't that popular compared to their contemporaries back in the day when they were around. And they're going to be handed a lot of opportunities. So I'll end off this segment by saying this. I'm going to have an open mind when it comes to their full-length album whenever that comes out. I'm not going to judge an entire album based on one single that might be bad. And folks, if I did that, then I probably wouldn't be into probably half the albums that I'm into or half the bands I'm into. Some bands just put out a bad single. It happens. So it remains to be seen whether this full-length Dark Angel album is going to be good. Now, a lot of people are giving them a lot of crap about the AI cover art. I really don't care about that. It looks kind of cool, actually, for being AI. A lot of people are giving them crap about that. That really isn't something I really care about, to be honest. I care more about the music. The art's kind of like frosting on the cake. But right now, they put out an album that's not very... they put out a song that's not very good. And it's not the production. It's not the sound of the vocals. Again, it ended off here saying that I don't feel the vocals fit the song that well at all, and that the band can do a lot better. So it remains to be seen. I will have an open mind going into listening to the full-length album. I'm not going to dismiss the album. But this is a band that should and could do much better than this. Now let's go into the last segment. Let's finish it on a positive note here on this show. Let's talk about Primal Fear and the new album called Domination. We got the artwork up here. Folks, I'm really excited for this. Before I get into the song, let me tell you all a little bit of a story about Primal Fear, because they are a band that has a significant history on this program. I love Primal Fear. I don't know any of the new members of the band, but I know that Ralph and Matt are really just kick-ass people, both of them. 27 years ago, when I started my show, which was a radio show back then, the first Primal Fear album came out. I ended up getting to interview Ralph Scheepers. For those of you that, of course, love Primal Fear, you know there is a song on that debut album called Formula One. And, Ralph and I, we talked about, his stint in Gamma Ray. We talked about the new band Primal Fear. And I think like 3/4 of the interview, we talked about Formula One racing, talking about the history of it, talking about our favorite drivers over the years and what racing teams we really liked. I mean, it was really a fun conversation. And one of the other things that I think has been fun to witness is to watch a band like this over the last 27 years put out solid to excellent album year after year. Great production, great songwriting, and there's something to be said about Ralph Scheepers and his vocals still being strong after all this time. And you know what that's a result of? I've said this numerous times. It's a result of keeping your body in shape and hitting the gym. Like when you see Ralph on these, you see on these Facebook posts of him in the gym and the dude looks ripped and he's like, pushing 60. He puts in the work to really make himself still sound good and relevant even after all this time. He really puts that work in. I've said this about Tim Ripper Owens too. Tim Ripper Owens, the guy sounds like he hasn't missed a beat his entire career. That dude is always at the gym, making sure his body stays in shape, keeping himself healthy. And when I think of Ralph, I think of Tim, I think of a few others. The fact these guys sound as good as they do, I can tell you is directly attributed to keeping your body in shape and taking care of yourself. And, as far as the new song goes, it's called Far Away. It's not an atypical song for Primal Fear, but it's a very good one. A lot of great hooks, a lot of great melodies. If you like Primal Fear and all the releases they've put out over the years, then you'll like the song. I mean, that's probably the best way to put it. And I gotta be, I mentioned Matt a little bit. Way back in the day, when Matt was working for Nuclear Blast, this is probably early 2000s. I actually met him at the release party for the Dark Ride, for Helloween's Dark Ride album back then. He was working for Nuclear Blast, and I did have a lot of conversations with him. He came on my show. and we had conversations, with like the Helloween website and stuff like that. But the guy, just a great, really great dude. We used to talk about WWE wrestling back then. We used to talk about like Stone Cold Steve Austin and a lot of these wrestlers and who our favorite wrestlers were. I mean, the guy was a really cool dude when I met him. I met him in person, and I've also, I had talked to him on the phone, way back in the day. Many emails back and forth. Just a class guy. I think another thing, too, that I like about this track, it's got a very positive vibe to it. A little bit different than the last album. I think some of the lineup changes had a little bit of an impact on this. Now, keep in mind, I know the band ended up getting a lot of crap over three members of the band quitting. Or, Alex Bayrote leaving, their drummer leaving. They basically had people leave all at once. And I explained this in a video that, number one, most of your favorite bands have one or two or three people that run them, especially if they've been around this long. And a lot of times those differences aren't negative ones, or they're not like angry. Most of the people they bring into the band are usually hired hands. And obviously, business is business. It's no hard feelings. People decide, you know what? I don't want to be in this band anymore. I don't like the new contract you're going to offer me. I'm going to leave. And that happens. Doesn't mean anybody hates each other. It doesn't mean that Ralph and Matt are evil and did anything bad. They just couldn't come to a business agreement with the people that were in the band. And I'm just speculating because I don't know what happened. But typically, as somebody that has been involved with bands, I have seen a lot of this, and that's what happens. And there's no animosity or ill will. People just move on. I think with Alex Bayrote, for example, I think it really helped him concentrate on the next Voodoo Circle album in that band. Not to mention he just had a kid. He gets to spend a little bit more time with the newborn child that him and his wife just had. But I mentioned that I think some new blood in the band would also be terrific. They ended up getting a guitar player from Angus McSix, which was a cool band. They ended up getting, Magnus Carlsen, phenomenal songwriter, by the way. I have a lot of his projects. He's a guy that I absolutely, in my opinion, I absolutely love a lot of the work he's done. So they have some new blood in the band, and typically that could lead to some great music. And so far with the first single, Far Away, absolutely incredible track. Ralph and the rest of this band do not sound like they've missed a beat at all. Ralph's voice sounds incredible as usual. The production is great. It's kind of a more typical, European power metal song, but still excellent. And as I talked about that Bay Area thrash band, Nefarious, earlier in the actual full episode of this podcast, Primal Fear, are they reinventing the wheel? No. Are they doing anything new or that hasn't been done before? No. And I'm talking about as far as a style of music is concerned. But that doesn't mean the song is bad. The song is great. And I'm looking at the album cover and I'm like, damn, I can't wait for this thing to come out. So that's where I'm at, folks. Again, I'm extremely excited for this next Primal Fear album. Ralph Sheepers he's just an incredibly cool dude. One of my favorite people to have on my radio show. And of course, I've had him on an episode of the podcast as well in the past. Just a great dude. Incredible vocalist. Really nice guy. Matt Sinner. Really cool dude. I cannot speak highly enough of both of these guys. All right, so that ends another episode of the Metal Command podcast. Again, if you like what you see and hear on this show, by all means, hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell to be notified anytime I do post any kind of content. And if you follow the show in any other form of social media, by all means, hit the like and subscribe button there. Thanks for watching. stay metal.